TV7 Israel News is made possible thanks to your generous donations. Shalom and good evening. This is TV7 Israel News broadcast to you from Jerusalem, and in today's top stories. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, in a meeting with visiting Bahraini Minister of Industry, Commerce and Tourism, Sheikh Zayed bin Rashid Al-Zayani, reiterated his excitement over the extraordinary energy and initiative between Israelis and Bahrainis, highlighting the evident eagerness of both peoples to embrace one another. The yet-to-be-signed normalization accord between Israel and Sudan has reportedly hit its first hurdle earlier this week, when the latter set a deadline for Washington to remove Khartoum from the list of state sponsors of terror. The Islamist Hamas organization calls on its rival Palestinian factions in the West Bank, including Palestinian Authority Chairman Mahmoud Abbas's powerful Fatah Faction, to abandon its recent decision to resume its coordination with Israel. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu reiterated his excitement over the extraordinary energy and initiative between the Israelis and Bahrainis, highlighting the evident eagerness of both peoples to embrace one another. Speaking alongside Bahraini Minister of Industry, Commerce and Tourism, Sheikh Zayed bin Rashid Al-Zayani, the Israeli premier voiced confidence that the realization of peace between Jerusalem and Manama will ultimately broaden the circle of peace for all countries in the Middle East and perhaps also beyond.
We realize peace because of the courageous decision made by King Mohammed, because of the extraordinary energy and initiative of Bahrainis and Israelis who are eager to embrace one another, to get to know one another, to do business with one another in all areas, in tourism and commerce and industry. You hold quite a few portfolios, I have to say, and evidently you do very, very well with that. So I know we've signed some agreements, we have more to go, and more importantly, I think we understand that this is a real peace, a peace between our peoples, a peace that will open economic benefits that were unimaginable just a few months ago, but now are coming to be. And I think this will broaden the circle of peace, not only for our own two peoples, but for all countries in the Middle East and perhaps beyond.
Minister bin Rashid Al-Zayani, who heads a relatively large delegation of senior business executives from the Kingdom of Bahrain to Israel, voiced his own gratitude for the opportunity to facilitate the signed peace accords, which, according to him, paves a new horizon for future generations who will reap the fruits of today's hard labors.
The steps we're building today are everlasting steps for future generations. It was a courageous move by His Majesty and yourself, and we thank you for that. We thank the American administration led by President Trump for facilitating it. And we feel we're paving a new future for future generations to leave this world a better place for them than when we have inherited. The peace has been signed, the diplomatic foundation has been laid. It's upon us now as ministers of trade and commerce and industry and tourism to move forward, to facilitate that, to forge the peace by having direct and constant integration between the business communities, which we believe will filter down even to the common citizen in Bahrain and Israel. We are genuine about this. We are fully committed, and like you mentioned, the pace we're moving at, it's quite a fast pace because we want to catch up on lost time.
It is important to mention that earlier in the day, Minister bin Rashid Al-Zayani held a meeting with Israeli Foreign Minister Gabi Ashkenazi, during which they signed a series of agreements to help bolster tourism, sports, culture, science and technology between the two nations. In other yet related news, Israeli Prime Minister conveyed Jerusalem's congratulatory wishes to the United Arab Emirates as it celebrates its 49th National Day today.
I want to wish His Highness Crown Prince Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed and all the citizens of the United Arab Emirates, our new friends, a very joyous National Day. Since the signing of the historic peace treaty between us, Israel-UAE relations have been moving ahead rapidly. quicker than we anticipated, in fact, at breakneck speed. We're cooperating in so many fields, in science and technology, in commerce and investments, in healthcare and education, in transportation and tourism. In these and so many other areas, our partnership is bringing tangible benefits to both our peoples. The fruits of peace are at hand. So when the UAE succeeds, Israel succeeds. And when Israel succeeds, the UAE succeeds. May our new partnership be an example to all nations of the Middle East. Together, we're building a better future for our two countries, for the region, and for the world. Happy National Day. May God bless all of you.
It is interesting to note, despite the evident backlash which the United Arab Emirates sustained on the Palestinian street over its decision to normalize its relations with the Jewish state, the UAE has recently reaffirmed its pledge to financially support UNRWA, the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine refugees in the Near East. The UAE's Minister of State for International Cooperation, Rim bint Ibrahim al-Hashimi, held a meeting with UNRWA's Commissioner General Philippe Lazzarini, during which he underscored that the UAE believes in the role that UNRWA plays in improving the lives of Palestinian refugees, and stressed that the UAE's long-standing, historic and unwavering commitment to the Palestinian people contributes to maintaining regional security and stability. Furthermore, she emphasized the need for cooperation, particularly against the backdrop of the COVID-19 pandemic, which requires additional efforts to support the approximately 5.6 million Palestinians, which the agency regards as refugees throughout the Middle East. It is also interesting to note that the United Arab Emirates currently chairs the session of the UNRWA Advisory Committee for the duration of 2020 and 2021. In other news, the yet-to-be-signed normalization accord between Israel and Sudan has reportedly hit its first hurdle earlier this week. Khartoum officials have reportedly set a deadline for the U.S. Congress to approve legislation by year's end that will have Sudan removed from the State Department's list of state sponsors of terror to ensure legal protection from any terror-related lawsuits. This ultimatum was relayed to U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo by Sudan's military leader, Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, in a phone conversation on Monday. Sudan's de facto leader further emphasized to Washington's top diplomat that unless Congress adopted legislation related to its removal from the so-called blacklist by year's end, Khartoum would rescind its decision to ratify the U.S.-brokered normalization accord with Israel. It is important to point out that this report was initially unveiled by the New York Times and was subsequently corroborated by TV7 in conversations with two sources in the U.S. Congress and one in the Department of State familiar with details of the discussions. Separately, the Israeli Foreign Ministry refused to comment on this report. Turning to the Gaza Strip, where the Islamist Hamas organization called on its rival Palestinian factions in the West Bank, including Palestinian Authority Chairman Mahmoud Abbas's powerful Fatah Faction, to abandon its recent decision to resume its cooperation with Israel. Senior Hamas official Khalil al-Haya stressed that while the resumption of communications between the Palestinian Authority and Israel negatively affected the process of national reconciliation between Gaza and Ramallah, the process to reach a permanent solution to the intra-Palestinian feud will persist.
وإذا الاتصالات مع الاحتلال جارية والإعلام يتداول ويتحدث عن عودة العلاقة مع السلطة. لكن بلا شك هذا السلوك من الإخوة في حركة فتح قد عطل وأصاب المسار بضربات. لكن هل نقول فشل؟ هل نقول نقطة وانتهينا؟ له نطالبكم ونطالب الإخوة في الفصائل وفي حركة فتح على وجه الخصوص أن ينظروا لما عرضناه عليهم، ونحن نقول أمامكم حماس ملتزمة بما عرضناه على الإخوة في حركة فتح في القاهرة من الآن.
The call of Hamas was also backed by the local Iranian proxy, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, which added its expectation of the Palestinian Authority to resume the transfer of funds to the Gaza Strip. Thank you for watching us. As part of TV7 Israel's prayer initiative, I would like to encourage you today to join myself and the team here in Jerusalem to lift up Ethiopia in prayer for its salvation and peace, alongside prayers for our persecuted brethren throughout Africa, the Middle East, and Far East, in addition to our ongoing prayers, of course, for the peace of Jerusalem, the salvation of Israel, for all those who are impacted by the corona contagion and its numerous ramifications worldwide. Separately, I would like to thank all of you who partner with TV7 Israel. Your dedicated monthly support for TV7, both by means of prayer and finance, is an essential component for our ongoing operations. I'm Jonathan Hassan, wishing you an Erev Tov u'Mevorach, and we will see you again tomorrow at the same time.